Thank you, Parliamentary Secretaries Rice and Russell. And as you just heard, unfortunately, our automatic record did not kick in. So we've started recording right now. And I will reach out to both Parliamentary Secretaries and the Mayor to make sure that we have the remarks posted on the website. So those who weren't able to join us at the beginning of this meeting will still have access to those. I'm very sorry about that. So on that note, I'd like to pass it over to MLA Jackie Taggart for an update.
We can't hear you, Jackie.
No sound.
Emily Taggart, you seem to be unmuted on our end. I'm wondering if there's an audio issue on the mute button. You can go to the next speaker if you like, and I can circle back to you. Okay. Great, so I will now pass it over to Andrea Stopa on behalf of MP Preparedness.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of MP Viss, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to join and thank the Village of Lytton for hosting this town hall meeting. MP Viss sends his regrets for not being able to speak with you tonight. It's been another busy week in Ottawa, and he is currently in the air flying home as we speak. My name is Andrea, and I am the Director of Parliamentary Affairs. Brittany, who normally attends, is unable to join as well, so I am very pleased to be speaking with you tonight from Ottawa. Last Wednesday and Thursday, MP Viss had the opportunity to visit Lytton and was happy to speak with many of you at the Resiliency Centre and with others in the community. The frustration, the tears, the anger, the exhaustion are very real, and living in limbo with unknown timelines and ever-moving goalposts certainly exasperates the situation. He feels and he knows your frustration. MP Viss heard from businesses that took advantage of COVID-19 relief programs like the Canada Emergency Bank Account and are now struggling with repayment. He is working with Minister Sajan and hopes to meet with him in short order on loan forgiveness. There is precedence for federal funding to businesses in light of the 2017 Elephant Hill wildfire, and even more recently, precedence with the funds downtown Ottawa businesses received during the protests. The same principles should be applied here. The situation with Canada Post has been unacceptable for quite some time, and while MP Viss was in Lytton, he learned that the temporary office cannot even sell stamps. MP Viss has brought this issue forward to Canada Post, along with the issue of PO boxes and the delay of the larger trailer. As we understand it, the larger trailer is ready to go and is in the process of final arrangements with Lytton First Nation. We will continue to work with Canada Post on getting solutions. Since the last Lytton Community Town Hall, the federal budget was tabled. And after British Columbia experienced the worst wildfires and atmospheric rivers witnessed in our history, we had high hopes for disaster recovery funding in budget 2022. Unfortunately, this budget falls significantly short of what our communities need. That said, we know that the provincial and federal governments are negotiating where the $5 billion earmarked for the BC disaster recovery will be spent. And there are other funding opportunities for infrastructure once the municipal government is in a position to apply. Budget 2022 allocated $24.7 million over 5 years to an emergency preparedness secretariat. In the meantime, MP Viss is working locally with many communities on immediate emergency assistance and recovery. MP Viss looks forward to working with the village on Housing Accelerator Fund and the Rapid Housing Initiative, both of which are federal funds to create affordable housing in vulnerable communities when they are ready to apply. As always, our office remains open should you require assistance with reestablishing any identification lost in the fire, such as passports, immigration documents, and we are available to help should you run into any issues with CRA filing your taxes this year. Thank you to everyone working hard to restore the community. Our ability to see the rebuild come to fruition determines where families will celebrate next birthdays and holidays, where entrepreneurs will achieve new targets, and where the Lytton Warriors basketball team will dunk their next win. These milestones deserve to be celebrated at home in Lytton. Let's keep working together to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I'm now going to go back to MLA Taggart and see if we can get the audio working here. No, not yet. Okay. All right, we will move now to Area I Director, Area I TNRD Director, Steve Rice. So over to you, Steve.
I'm okay. Thanks for inviting me. I'm at Silga now and got Minister down here that we just gave a good speech, Mr. Cullen and stuff, but it's hard knowing the Lytton folks. We've been out evacuated for 5.5 months and they've been almost twice as long as us. So all I can say is my hearts go out. It's hard enough to not be able to go home, but it's also really difficult to put your head around not knowing when you're going home. And you know, I'm glad we're having these meetings and it has a consistent meetings, and we can discuss this and move into this, and certainly the residents outside the municipal boundaries, you know, we're listening to them, and one of the Lyttonites was there at our last board meeting and stuff. I think these are steps in the right direction. But a lot of these questions have never been asked of our government before, because the scope of the disaster has never happened in our lifetimes before. So, you know, I think we're all got our hearts in the right place, trying to do the right things as fast as we can. But these are hard questions to answer. And I just, being an evacuee twice this year in 2021 with the wildfire first, and then again with the flooding and stuff, it's heartfelt. But sometimes the sadness overcomes you. It's anxiety, it's anger, and then back to sadness, and all that scope of emotions after 2 years of COVID. I call 2021 the hat trick from hell: COVID to fire to flood. I don't think we'll ever experience a year that has that hat trick from hell in our lifetimes. But I just applaud everybody, and I want to thank everybody that's, you know, putting the foot forward to try to, you know, help us get to the next step. And let's hope we have a good meeting tonight. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Steve. I believe we're still having just some technical issues with the audio with MLA Taggart, but we will reach out. We'll make sure that we get any of her updates posted on the website afterward. Sorry about that. All right. So on that note, if we haven't already met, my name is Jasmine Patrick, and I'll be helping moderate the community meeting again today. So just on the next slide here, I want to give you a quick glance at the agenda so you know what to expect over the next hour and a half. So in a second, I'm going to run through some housekeeping items and some Zoom tools. Then we'll have staff provide a number of updates on the recovery and rebuild initiatives. After the updates, we'll open up the session to all of your questions and all of your feedback. And then finally, we'll just close off with some really quick remarks. So the purpose of today's session is to provide an update for residents and to provide them with an opportunity to ask questions and give feedback, and also provide you with the latest updates on the short-term recovery plan. So there are a few rules for participation. You should be aware that now the meeting is being recorded, and I apologize for that snippet at the beginning where it wasn't. We'll make sure we get that information to you. But the recording will be posted on the Village of Lytton website. We ask that you be respectful in your tone and with the use of the chat box, and of the use of the time by keeping your questions direct and to the point, and allow others to speak. Please use appropriate language. So refrain from using profanities or abusive language. Negative comments toward any individuals will not be tolerated, and anyone using abusive language will be removed from the session. If any media are in the meeting tonight, you're very welcome to be here. Welcome. However, the primary purpose of this meeting tonight is to answer resident questions. So we just respectfully ask that you hold any questions and email them to communication@lytton.ca, and we'll respond to those after the meeting. And then finally, as always, please speak up. We're here today to hear your thoughts and answer your questions and receive your feedback to help us make better decisions moving forward. So please share all of your questions. So as you'll see on the screen here, I'll just take a second to explain how to use the Zoom platform in case we have anyone new on the call. So first at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a chat button. If you click it, the chat box is going to pop up on the right-hand side of your screen. And you can use that chat function to send us questions today. At the end of the meeting, there's going to be an opportunity for you to also ask your questions out loud. So to do that, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. And you'll be able to find that by clicking reactions at the bottom of your screen and then clicking raise hand. And if you are joining us by landline telephone today, you can still participate. So *6 is for muting and unmuting, and *9 is to raise your hand. So *6 and *9. And then finally, if at any point in the session you're running into technical issues, we'll do our very best to help you out. Just email communication@lytton.ca and we'll do what we can to fix those. So on to the updates section of the meeting. So first on the list, we have the safe return category. So I'll first introduce Kelsey Winter, who's going to speak to FireSmart.
Thanks, Jasmine. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
All right. So thanks for allowing me to join you all today. For those of you that I haven't had a chance to introduce myself to yet, my name's Kelsey Winter. I'm the chair of the BC FireSmart Committee and the FireSmart program lead for the BC Wildfire Service. So you all know the occurrences of last summer, but we were lucky enough in August to have access permitted to the Lytton First Nation and the village of Lytton. Our research team was able to enter and collect some data in order to paint a picture of kind of how the fire ignited structures and how the fire traveled through the communities. The purpose of the research was to understand what about the community made it vulnerable to fire and to be able to provide some recommendations on how to build back in a more fire resilient way. So on Wednesday, next week, May 4th, from 4 to 5:30 p.m., the BC FireSmart Committee is going to be hosting a Zoom session for those impacted by the Lytton fire. So the researchers will outline their findings, we'll talk about some of the recommendations, and then we'll have time for some discussion and questions and a chance for you to voice your concerns in a safe space. So I would really encourage all of you that are able to sign up and attend, and the information in the Zoom link has been shared with Jasmine. So hopefully I can also pop it in the chat link for everyone as well, but it'll be a good opportunity to learn about the report. We're also at FireSmart working on finding some funding for the village of Lytton in your rebuild through the Community Resiliency Investment Program. And that's really all that I have for you for a FireSmart update for today. But if you do have any questions about the FireSmart program, the session that we're hosting next week, or even questions about the specific wildfire resiliency of your home, you can always reach out. It's just info@firesmartbc.ca, and someone from my team will right away connect you to the right person and program. But thanks for having me today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kelsey. I'm now going to turn it over to Sophie, who's going to chat about the application of the proposed bylaw 711.
Thank you, Jasmine. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. 1 second. All right. So good evening, everyone. So I'll just put this here. Thanks for having me tonight. So I just want to briefly walk you through some of the work we've been doing to support the village in partnership with the great staff that you have helping on this file. So at ICLR, we've been supporting the development of a few things, including the proposed building bylaw 711 on wildfire resilience to build better structures that are safer for future risk of wildfire. We've also been supporting the development of a community wildfire protection and recovery plan. And as part of our mission too, we're also trying to support the village to answer any questions you might have or concerns around the implementations of some of these recommendations. So we looked at the comments and concerns that some of you shared around proposed bylaw 711, and we grouped them into four main themes. So some of you expressed concerns about the additional costs associated with the bylaw, others around the vegetation management by the village, what type of vegetation would be allowed on your properties, and as well as the location of propane tanks. In terms of costing, I've shared that before in other meetings, but we had someone on our team estimate that the added measures of add these wildfire resilience features into your homes would add to an average of $5,000 for homeowners in Lytton. And for those who are insured, we are working with insurance companies, and I can tell you that most of them, if not all of them, are very supportive of these measures and will very likely cover them. And in terms of the uninsured and underinsured, we are working very hard to secure that $5,000 per home to help establish a rebate program that could help implement these things. In terms of the risk mitigation by the village, so we worked with the village to help support the development and implementation of the Community Wildfire Protection and Recovery Plan. I believe, and Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, that the initial findings should be available within the next few weeks. And after that, we'll help to support securing funding with FireSmart and with others to help address some of these recommendations, which are around fuel management and other things, so beyond the property level. Now, an important topic that came up quite a bit is vegetation. There have been some concerns expressed around vegetation, so I just want to take a minute to reiterate that under the proposed bylaw 711, the one area where we do not want to see vegetation is that 1.5 meter around structures. So this is the area where we don't want to see anything combustible. So you could have, for example, stone, gravel, and things like that. And then beyond that, we want to see a grass is mowed, and there's a variety of plants that are all available on the FireSmart website. I'm happy to share this flyer with all of you that you can select from, and there's really quite a few. So these are just a sample of trees, shrubs, perennials, annuals that you could pick from in these sections beyond the 1.5 meter. Just to show here that there's quite a bit of variety and things that you could pick from. Also, many of them are bee friendly. I know several of you have contributed or participated in the local farmers markets. So there is still an opportunity to contribute to the farmers market and create some local honey. So just want to highlight that. And finally, the concerns around propane tanks. So I just want to take a minute to clarify that you know, the guide that we use to base the bylaw on included this restriction because of two things. So home protection is one of them, and also firefighter safety, because as you can imagine, if there was to be a fire that started in the village, having a propane tank near your home could, you know, put them at risk. So this is the reason why this restriction is there. That being said, we recognize that every lot is different and that these restrictions don't quite apply the same to everyone in Lytton. So I just want to explain what was the reasoning behind that. And let you know that we obviously understand that there's lot by lot considerations and things like that, but I just want to clarify what was the purpose of that. So that's all I have. And obviously we welcome any questions you might have. Always looking forward to speaking with you and answering any concerns on your end. So thank you very much for having me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sophie. So I'm now going to pass it over to Ron Dickinson to see if he has any other updates on the building bylaws. So over to you, Ron.
Thank you, Jasmine. Yeah, the update, there's a lot of building bylaws around, and Sophie was referring to the 711 bylaw, and my comments are going to be focused on bylaw 710, which was the bylaw that actually controls building under the current standards. And it doesn't set necessarily standards that are related to the ones that Sophie was talking about. So it uses the building code as the main standard. That building bylaw has been rewritten in to principally to bring it into line with current legal standards and to react to things that have changed since the last building bylaw that was written in 2018. It currently, last night, it received second reading, and it is currently in the office of the Village of Lytton's legal counsel, Don Lidstone, and he's reviewing the comments that have been coming in over the last months and trying to make sure that they're addressed in the bylaw. And also, one of the comments, which is totally understandable, was that the bylaw is written in at a certain level of legal parlance that really is a little different or difficult for us non-legal minds to understand. At the end of the day, the bylaw has to serve as a legal document that can be used to regulate construction. And Dawn is going to try and make those two requirements as compatible as possible. But at the end of the day, it may turn out that it's still a little bit difficult to read for people who aren't familiar with that sort of legislative piece. So the Village of Lytton will always have someone like myself or people that follow me that understand the principles of the building bylaw and would be, in my case right now, happy to explain it to anybody that wants to know. And I'm sure there'll be somebody around in the future to do that as well. So the bylaw has had second reading. We're still open to making some changes, but the 11th hour is arriving very soon. This third reading will come up in another 2 or 3 weeks. And after that, there won't be an opportunity to really make any dramatic changes between third and fourth reading, which the fourth is the final reading. So we will have the bylaw adopted and functioning by the end of May. And looking at how much progress we're making, I'm thrilled with the progress, but I don't think I'll have to be issuing any building permits before we get the new bylaw in place. So that's the update from my point of view, and I'll be in the woods here waiting to hear any questions and answer whatever I can. So thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Ron. I'm now going to pass it over to Jamie from the TNRD, also to provide a bit of an update on building bylaws as well. So over to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Jasmine. Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's actually just a bit of a plug for our TNRD building permit process. Just a reminder that similar to we were discussing the Lytton building permit process, we have a similar process at TNRD. So I'm not going to really speak to any of the details of it, but just to let you know that our building department is available and happy to answer any questions about rebuilding on any property outside of the Village of Lytton boundaries. We have a real kind of user-friendly introduction guide on our website. If you just go to our TNRD website or just Google TNRD building permits, it kind of gives you an introduction to the process and what's required. And yeah, so that applies to any development or rebuilding on non-Village of Lytton property in electoral area I. I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jamie. I also want to remind everybody on the call today that if you would like to change the view of your screen, so if you want to see the speakers big and the presentation small, you just click view at the top of your screen, and then you can either choose a view and have it beside, or you can say swap video and shared screen, and you'll get it right on the middle of your screen there. So next I'm going to introduce Rcmp, and he's going to speak to a number of things, including the zoning bylaw, official community plan, and wildfire development permit areas.
Thank you, Jasmine. Yeah, before I begin, I'd just like to point out that what we call bylaw 711 will probably take a somewhat different form. A lot of the material in it will still be there, but it may take the form of a development permit area within the official community plan. Is just a different vehicle to implement it as opposed to the building bylaw itself. So just to clarify that, as Sophie mentioned, right now there is a wildfire plan and recovery plan happening. That information, along with I think the information that FireSmart that Kelsey will be presenting next week, will provide a very clear picture of why some of those wildfire development permit requirements are going to be so very important for the rebuild and the future safety of the residents of Lytton. So that is a bit delayed. It's separate from the building bylaw. The building bylaw will proceed as a building bylaw, but that information will catch up likely in the form of an OCP development permit area. We've also last night tabled zoning bylaw amendments. These amendments are really, they're not a full review of the zoning bylaw. That'll take place after the official community plan, because there's always going to be a connection between the official community plan and zoning. But this is really to take the current zoning bylaw and to deal with, in some ways, bring the language, a bit like the building bylaw, bring the language to a more current standard in some of the definitions. It'll also increase some flexibility, because we may have to deal with temporary worker housing, those types of things that wouldn't be allowed in the old bylaw. And so really, we've added a number of uses. We've added things like congregate care, so that in fact there's a variety of housing types that may be developed at some point. I see Jack up there. Jack may come with some creative housing at some point in time, and the village bylaw will have to be able to accommodate a wider variety of uses. So the purpose of this is just to make sure that when the building starts, that there's a wide variety of uses. So I would suggest that it's now been tabled for council consideration. It'll be forward to the CAC for a little more in-depth review, which is the purpose of the CAC. And of course, we'll go through the normal approval process, whereby there's readings culminating in a formal public hearing, because it is a zoning bylaw amendment, before it's implemented. So lots of time to review it, to look at it, to make suggestions, make additions, suggest deletions. As I said, I tried to really make it as flexible as possible, so that there's a wide degree of flexibility for the village, and being able to if someone comes in, be able to accommodate as many of the uses as we can. So that's it. The process is just starting. Again, I suggest that people interested in the zoning bylaw can take a look at it. If you have any questions, go through communications. We'll try to answer what we can, and start the process off. So thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Ron. I'm now going to pass it over to James, who's going to speak to debris removal and funding.
Thanks, Jasmine. Thanks to the community and everyone for allowing me to present tonight. So debris removal continues. A lot of what we're doing right now is final coordination. Some of the learnings from Zone 1, being south of First Ave, really trying to focus on that safe corridor from Hobo Hollow, from the CN Bridge and up onto the highway through that corridor. I think we're close. We have received the sampling that was being completed by our environmental consultants for this zone, which was the last limitation to allow us to go in and pull out the foundations and the soil in that zone from all the uninsured properties. And obviously we're working very closely for the insured properties. There's 5 of them in that zone that we'd like to have removed prior to the middle of May as well. So looking at the mechanisms to allow us to move forward with that work. We've also supplied Cumcheen Heritage Committee and the province with applications and work plans for all the zones across the entire property or across the village, so 1 through 7 all the way up to the church. And now we're proceeding to develop work plans for the services, so the streets and sidewalks and any of the utilities that we need to work on under the ground. So testing has also been done on all the surface debris in the village from zones 1 through 7. And we're starting to do subsurface testing in the zones where we've been approved through Heritage. So I'd say work is, it's been a little bit spotty during the communication in the first zone right now, but with all of the approvals in place and all of the planning pretty much completed and the testing done, I think we'll see some fairly quick action through the remainder of Zone 1 and quite a bit of activity moving into Zone 2.
Great, thanks, James. I'm going to hand it over to Jamie from the TNRD again to see if he has any updates on that end.
Hi, thanks again. Yeah, debris removal on the TNRD side is being coordinated just a little differently. We're working with individual property owners on supporting cleanup efforts on their lands. So the process, I think most people are already aware who are in the kind of the impacted area. But if you're not, the process is to contact us, and what we'll do is we do a property assessment to identify the hazards and basically the work that needs to be done for the debris removal, and that includes discussion with the landowner in terms of the degree of debris removal that's required or they want to do, like for example, whether the foundation should be removed or not. So we don't prescribe that. That's a discussion with the landowner. And then following that property assessment, we require a waiver form to be completed, and then we'll coordinate a contractor to come in to do that debris removal. So we're in the property assessment stage right now. So if you haven't already contacted us and been on our list and completed a waiver, please do so as soon as possible so we can add you to the list of properties to be assessed. And then the contract for cleanup, we anticipate having that happening within the next probably month or two, happening in May and in June. So I think that is the update from our end. I don't think there's anything further.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jamie. I'm actually going to switch up the agenda just a little bit. We have Ben here from Canada Post, and he's just about to board a flight. So I want to make sure that you hear from him first. So I'm going to pass it over to him right now.
All right, thank you very much. I really appreciate being accommodated. I'm actually headed back from Silga back to Vancouver through Kelowna. So I'm in Kelowna Airport. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I, of course, have to be masked here in the airport. So I hope everybody's able to hear me. First, I guess I'll start with the relatively good news. The trailer, the temporary smaller trailer is fully staffed up now. We do have, so it's gone from what was.
Oh, Ben, you're just cutting out a little bit. I'm just wondering maybe if you turn off your video, if the
10
connection will be
a.m.
better.
to 2:45 Monday, Friday. It's now 1:30. So that's 9 a.m. to. Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Is that
Thanks
better?
so much.
I hope that's better. I
I think
apologize.
that's better. Can you actually repeat the last maybe
Okay, I
couple
hope
sentences?
that's better.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, the
Oh,
hour so it's sure, certainly. So the now that the smaller post office is fully staffed up, the hours are now extended, going from what previously was 10 a.m. to 2:45. It'll now be 9 a.m. to 4:30 Monday to Friday. It will be closed for lunch from 12:30 to 1:30. So that's the good news. We're fully staffed with extended hours. Now for the not the bad news, but the continued patience and delay regards into the larger trailer. I first like to say that I want to give my fulsome apologies. I take full responsibility. I don't believe I did a proper job of setting expectations. I understand the desperate need folks to have the larger trailer with the washrooms, the PO boxes, and the full suite of services. But I was unaware of sort of what's happening on the ground between Lytton First Nation and our facilities management. I am happy to report that things are progressing a lot more. The site plan is being submitted. We're contracting a surveyor. We're working with BC Ambulance. We'll also have their trailer just adjacent at this new site. So things are a little bit more further along than I believed a couple of weeks ago, but there will still be a delay of a few weeks while we work with Lytton First Nation. And I understand that the frustration, especially in regard to the postal boxes. So we are working on an alternative solution, but apologies for that. And in regard to the stamps, I am working with our retail team to have that available as soon as possible in the smaller trailer. So hopefully next meeting, I'll be able to update you, and that might be even available in advance of that. So again, my apologies for not doing a good enough job of communicating the full scope of what's happening with the larger trailer, bringing it down. It shouldn't be too much longer. We are at the final phases of the planning with the Lytton First Nation. They've been a fantastic partner. And I can't appreciate, admire, and thank everyone enough for their patience. I know this community has been through a lot, and they absolutely deserve things to happen a lot faster, and that includes what we're providing at Canada Post. So hopefully I'll have a lot better news next time. And again, I thank everybody for being such wonderful, patient people. And yeah, that's it for me.
amazing. Thank you so much, Ben. And thanks for taking the time at the airport there. All right, we'll go back to the regular agenda now. So I'm going to turn it over to Jack, who I believe is here. Yeah, and he's going to provide an update on housing.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me. I may be doing a little bit of leapfrogging as I'm going through the information, but let me start by saying, since I started in this position, I've had a lot of ongoing communication with various housing providers, mostly modular, some tiny homes, individual builders. And I've had some preliminary conversation with them, but mostly, and I'll speak to this later around the survey work we need to do. I've been essentially telling them, we still have yet to determine, what our short and long-term plan is for housing. So having said that, both James and I have been in conversations with Camp Tech. They have the capacity and the ability to provide us with a 40-person camp, basically. The units consist of, they're kind of like a duplex style. They're called a wet sleeper with a 1-bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living room on one side, and it's kind of a mirror image on the other side. We were a little nervous because it looked like the units they were talking about had been called for with the uptake in the energy sector, but it appears that that's not the case. They're still confident that we'll be able to access these for interim housing. The question then, though, becomes where do we put this? And there's been some conversation with Aspen Planers, as I'm sure many of you are aware. I actually have a meeting set up. I'm in Vancouver right now. I've got a meeting set up for Saturday to meet with a representative of Aspen Planers and hopefully be able to move this further along so we can determine if that would be, I guess, if we can enter into some kind of a lease agreement with them to set up some type of interim housing on that property. I've had conversations with BC Housing. And I've actually crafted a proposal. I just finished it yesterday, in fact, to present to them. It's a fairly kind of open, if you will, open-ended kind of proposal that doesn't have the typical, design, precise number of units. But as I explained to BC Housing, until we're not quite at that point, but I want to get something before them for them to consider and look at, so we can get that conversation going. At this stage, what's been presented to them will be an 18-unit, 3-story building with on the main floor 6 units for seniors, and then the other stacked up for low-income families and individuals. This ties into the next. So I have a meeting tomorrow in Vancouver with the owner of the Totem Motel. And when I emailed him initially, it was looking like he was going to rebuild. He's not certain of that now, and he wants to speak to me. The property, if he doesn't rebuild, in my conversations with some of the other team, we felt it would be a great location for, again, this housing project, and it could be one of more than, well, it could be one of 2 or more. As probably some of you know, and this is kind of old information, but I have submitted a proposal to BC Transit to provide some bus service to Lytton, and what that essentially will consist of would be a connection once a week from Lytton to Lillooet, sort of looping twice a day, and a second connection with Ashcroft. And the purpose of this is to, of course, until grocery stores and healthcare and those types of things get back rebuilt, there's going to be need to access some of those other services. And I've spoken to BC Transit about this. There is a bus that my former agency operates, and it actually comes through Lytton one day a week and goes off to Kamloops. That's the Health Connections, and that bus is situated in Lillooet. I'm hoping that we can acquire a second bus and situate that actually in Lytton, which would save some of the dead time for traveling. And also we have a driver in Lytton as well too. So it makes it quite easy to get up and running with this service. I've just an email has been sent out, or not an email, rather, communication has been sent out to many of the residents. And I've received responses back from 19 residents who are looking for some interim or temporary housing. I've communicated back to them just to say thank you, and we will be in touch with them fairly soon to give them an idea as to timeframes, location, and also what they can expect as well too. I guess before they finally commit that they want to relocate back to the community, if we were able to set up some interim housing on the Aspen Plainer site. I'll just finish off by saying that it's been difficult, and Darlene is well aware of this, of sort of determining based on some of the resident data to get that sort of complete or more fulsome narrative as to what people's intentions are. Having said that, I've been working with some of the Collier's representatives, and we have a kind of a final meeting tomorrow. And it looks like we've kind of nailed it down. We're going to be following a kind of a grid that James has set up in terms of zones and by address. And I have put together a team of a couple of other individuals, and we're going to be conducting a very quick survey of residents to determine, again, if they're coming back, if they're in need of interim housing, have some conversation about their expectations. If they're not returning, if they're looking to what they're going to do with their property, if they're going to sell it, or and just get a bit of a more precise and concise picture as to what we're looking at as we go further. So that's pretty much my report.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jack.
Thanks, Jasmine.
All right, I'm now going to pass it over to MOTI, and I believe Brad is here with us today.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can. Great.
Oh, perfect. Right on. Thanks for having me on here. Sorry I haven't been on the previous ones too many times, but things have been pretty static, but we're moving into another bit of a change right now. I think I sent back a note, but we are going to be going back to the temporary access at the Rcmp Bridge for 1 week, starting on May 13th through the 18th. They need to do some more jacking on one of the piers in the middle of the span of the permanent bridge on the Trans-Canada there. So they're going to have to close down for 1 week. We'll go back to that other temporary bridge that we left intact in the traffic control management plan that was in place before. So that will affect the longer loads again. We'll go back to the same sort of restrictions at that site, but again, only for the 5 days at most there. So that's what's happening at that site. The Siwash site just south of town there at Kanaka Bar, they finished up the majority of the works there. We got down to that pipe arch structure, the concrete structure that was deeply buried in the debris from the runoff there, and it's functioning again. And they've changed the traffic pattern up a little bit down there at the Jackass site. So there's 2 pilot cars going back and forth. I understand now operations have sped up quite a bit over before. And that's kind of the setup that's going to be in place for the coming time here as the Jackass site gets work on it. The Highway 12 slide that's occurring there, movement on it is slowed down quite considerably. There's still some movement on the one end, a little bit there, but our geotech Nicole group there are working on a plan here to restore two-way traffic on it, but at a reduced capacity, which will be bumped up from the current 14,500 kg limit to a 50% capacity. So that's quite a bit more than what we have right now. And it just won't be fully back going yet. So, and again, monitoring and long-term solutions are being designed as we go here, but we're waiting for some LiDAR surveying data to come back so our geotech can complete that temporary plan there to open it up to two-way traffic and 50% capacity again. And I think that kind of sums things up for us there. There's just a lot of cleanup work still to be done on a lot of the sites throughout the area. Highway 8 is, there's a newsletter that's out on that one there that goes to a lot of stakeholders. I'm sure many people on the call have received that one, but they're making great progress there on connecting it through so that people can get through that stage 1 access back to their properties. And again, there's lots more work going on that corridor as the summer progresses here. So yeah, lots of good stuff happening in our world, and we're just we're keeping things going here.
Great, thanks so much, Brad. All right, I'm now going to pass it back over to James, who's going to provide a quick update on critical infrastructure and water.
Okay, thanks, Jasmine. Not much update from the last update, except that we've got a number of quotes for some of the work we want to do. We've got approval to enter into contract for some of the engineering and the design work and assessments that we still need to finish. I think we've got a lot of data on the water system, and so it's really just crossing the T's and dotting the I's on what we need to do. The plan is still to cap the water lines at each property back to the main trunk of the water system, so back to the curb stops. While we're doing that, we'd like to assess the curb stops. We know some of them are still working, some of them aren't. So as we remove the foundations and the debris with MatCon, we're also going to be disconnecting that infrastructure. The sewer lines will be capped somewhere between 4 and 6 feet back from the existing foundations. But a lot of the old water lines are made out of a cast material. They are of quite a vintage. And so it makes a lot of sense just to take them right back to the main trunk and then be reinstated at that point moving forward. So you may see some concrete curb cuts starting happening. We may have to cut back into the asphalt in some areas of the village to do those curb stops and the capping of the services. I expect that we will get a design in the next 4 to 6 weeks for a lot of the work that we want to do, and then we would start to go out to contractors, primarily to put some relief valves in the main water line. We want to be able to segregate the system from the downtown village and the wastewater treatment plant, so that we could allow water to continue to run to the wastewater treatment plant while we've got it shut off for utility disconnects in the village. And then following that, we would, through the assessments, the CCTV scoping in the cameras, we'll start to develop designs for reinstating the water systems across the village. We also have some grants that we're working on, so we continue to progress those. And the last one, I think, is just looking for additional water operator capacity for the village as required by the Interior Health Authority. So we continue to look for partners and opportunities to develop that capacity.
Great, thanks so much, James. Now going to pass it over to Mary Ann and Derek from BC Hydro.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here again tonight. We really appreciate it. I'm going to provide a quick update on our progress with both debris removal and also the rebuilding of our infrastructure. So in terms of debris removal, we are coordinating with TELUS right now to jointly remove our damaged equipment from the village, and we are targeting the end of May to complete the removal. At the direction of council, we are moving ahead with rebuilding our infrastructure overhead as it was prior to the fire. And right now our local design team is working on designing the main infrastructure, and we are targeting the end of the year to complete construction. We are also looking at system improvements to enhance reliability for our customers in this area. So the first stage of the rebuild will focus on the main overhead feeder line along Main Street, and then we will rebuild the overhead on 1st, 7th, and Fraser Street to complete the loop. So once this work is completed, customers can begin the process to reconnect by hiring a certified contractor and seeking appropriate approvals from the Village of Lytton and Technical Safety BC. Once that is done, you can request a reconnection from BC Hydro. And in order to do that, you can either visit us online at www.bchydro.com/get-connected or call us directly at 1-877-520-1355. Again, thanks so much for having us here tonight, and we're happy to take any questions at the end of the meeting.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Marianne.
Thank you.
So we're now going to move on to the essential services section. So I'm going to hand it right on over to Ron Matuzzi, who I believe has a Resiliency Center update. Oh, Ron, you're on mute over there. There. Oh. There we go. Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yeah, obviously when I lost my place here, Leslie quickly put it on mute to buy me some time. I don't know how I ended up on mute, but nevertheless, we're not on mute anymore. So the Resiliency Center continues to be pretty busy. I see the Red Cross here. They may want to speak to it, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but a lot of activity, a lot of groups meeting there. I think one of the the big announcement in the week coming up is that the donation card distribution will be happening there on May 4th, 17th, and 31st. So those are really important dates.
It's May 3rd.
Oh, sorry, May 3rd. Oh,
May 3rd.
May 3rd?
Yeah.
Okay, I had May 3rd and changed it to the 4th. May 3rd, 7, disregard the last statement. And Councillor Hay will be there, and thankfully Councillor Hay knows the date, which is going to be great because he'll be the one handing out the cards. So that'll take place on May 3rd, 17th, and 31st. And I think that's, like I said, there's been lots of activities, by-election, a lot of things happening back and forth, and it continues to be a busy place. Thanks for all the volunteers who are there, keeping the place running and greeting people and being there for the community. So we certainly appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks, Ron. I'm now going to hand it over to Daphne from Community Futures.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I would first like to start by acknowledging that Community Futures Sun Country provides services within the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Niklakatma, Secwepemc, Statlium, and Stolo nations, and I am actually calling in from Tecumseh to Secwepemc tonight. So we're continuing our outreach with business owners, but as previously mentioned, there are many who have sought employment, both in Lytton and other communities they were evacuated to. But I am going to, now that the weather is better, I'm traveling to Lytton once a month on the second Tuesday monthly. And we're actually considering having me there every 2 weeks starting in May. I hear things kind of ramp up a little bit in the spring. So I wanted to remind everyone on the call tonight that I'm here to help with business recovery, as well as new business concept development. So if you have ideas or things that you want to run by me, and that's pretty much anything from your home-based business to you want to put in a grocery store or something like that, come by, check it out. To the Resiliency Center is where the business incubator is. On May 11th, I'll be actually hosting a Facebook for Business seminar. So there is a sign-up sheet, or there will be one. I'm not sure where we're at with that, at the business incubator at the Resiliency Center. So we know how many to plan for. And the Community Future Sun Country is hiring a business incubator information officer, but it's via funding through the ASETS program, and the job description is on the CF Sun website, but I can actually drop the link into the chat when I'm done here. And finally, I wanted to highlight there's a grant, a couple of digital adoption program grants through the federal government. One's called Grow Your Business Online, and one is called Boost Your Business Technology. And they're fairly straightforward applications online. So if you want to learn more or apply for them, please just feel free to give me a call. I'll also provide my contact information in the chat as well. Come by the Resiliency Center on the 11th is when I'll be there all day. And I'd love to meet all the folks who are looking for ideas about how to get their businesses going for the year. Thanks again.
Thanks, Daphne. I'm now going to pass it over to Tammy Germain from the Canadian Red Cross.
Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, evening. I don't even know what it is anymore because it's been a really long day. Thank you for having us here again. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be sitting here with you all today. I just want to acknowledge the land and territory of the Stolo peoples from where I'm joining you. So I'm back in Langley, not traveling this week. And I just want to, I'm just listening to all of these updates, and it's really good to hear all of the updates in the forward movement. But I just want to really shout out to Denise. Denise O'Connor is the volunteer coordinator at the Resiliency Center, and really has been a staple for the Red Cross in connecting people to the case management. So thank you to Denise. I don't know if you're on the call, because I'm joining from my phone and I can't see everybody. So thank you for that. And I just have some very basic updates or simple updates. No PowerPoint presentation from us this time. So just some numbers. So there's 157 families that we're supporting through case management in Village of Lytton proper. 42 from the TNRD, and as well as surrounding areas. So we are supporting people impacted by the Lytton fire that are in the Regional District North Okanagan, Regional District Central Okanagan, as well as the Fraser Valley. We just came off of, we traveled through the fire impacted areas or communities, and recognizing that people are all over the place. There's actually, I think, 17 different locations where people are evacuated to. So it's been a challenge for people to connect into the Red Cross. And again, thank you to those who are helping your neighbors, who are sharing the information with your neighbors, even helping them to connect. So if you know of somebody who has not connected with our case management team yet, I'm going to get Raj. She's our new communications specialist, and she will probably be doing the updates moving forward. But our case management number is 1-800-863-6582. And additionally, you can also email BC Recovery supports@redcross.ca. And Raj will type that in the chat as well. Village of Lytton website. So we have been working with communications through the Village of Lytton. So all of our information on how to connect with case management, what to expect in case management, that will all be on the Village of Lytton website. So you can look for it locally, as well as on the Red Cross website, which might be a little harder to navigate. If you go to the resource section on the Village of Lytton, the Canadian Red Cross will be there, and all of the documents, as well as how to connect in with us. And I think the last thing I have is the case management team has been going into the Resiliency Center and I think Kamisheen Resort. So the next time that they will be in community will be the 3rd week of May. And I think I'd just like to bring Raj onto, if she can come on and unmute and just say hello. She will be our communication specialist moving forward. And thank you very much, everybody, in supporting the Village of Lytton, the people impacted by the wildfire, and connecting with case management with the Red Cross.
Hi, my name is Raj, the new communication specialist for the Red Cross, and I'm looking forward to meeting everyone and helping out wherever I can. And I will leave my contact information on the chat, and that's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Raj and Tammy. I'm now going to pass it over to Ryan Denault from United Way.
Good evening, everybody. Really happy to be invited here to speak again this evening. My name is Ryan Denault. I'm working with the United Way. I'm a community engagement specialist. I am a Skeetcheston band member and a 4th generation British settler in the unceded territory of the Tecumseh-Secwepemc. I'm very happy to report that we have been able to support the Lytton Area Relief Center. So that's the centers at Siska, Scupa, and on the west side there of the Lytton First Nation. We've been able to support with some flood relief, with a flood relief funding envelope. And we specifically have been assisting them now with some non-perishable relief funding. I did want to highlight that, I'm still coming into the community. I've been in community now for about 6 weeks, and I'm still getting a bit of a baseline on what everybody is dealing with, and just getting story after story about everything that's going on in the area. One of the things that we want to do to help support is actually, we'd like to hire on a member of the community to help us with some community building within the community of Lytton and the surrounding areas. We're very open to a bunch of different ideas on how we can support and do that. I know that it's difficult with people being dispersed in, like Tammy said, 70 different locations in the area. So I would be even interested in hearing from people that are displaced in some of these other areas. If anybody is interested in having a conversation about how they could support me in this role, I'd be very open to hearing from you. I'll put my information on the chat as well. But I really want to hear from any of the community members that think they might be able to give me a hand in the area. One of the, in being able to come out and talk to some of the people that are volunteering their time, I have heard of a couple of the events that you guys are looking to run. One of them is May Days, which we are hoping to support, and we're looking to support that. I'm going to be at May Days on Saturday at minimum, hoping to be there hopefully on the Sunday as well, but Saturday for sure. I really look forward to any of the community members that are coming out there. Please come and find me. I will be walking around to introduce myself to you. And, I hope to be in the community for the long term and to help build that sense. For anybody that's displaced in any of these 17 locations, again, please reach out to me as well, because I'd like to get a sense of where you are and get a sense of your story and see how I can support you guys as you're waiting for the rebuild and having this new life outside of community. I'd like to be a part of assisting you anywhere that I can. So again, thank you so much for inviting me. I very much look forward to getting to know you guys further and support you where I can. Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan. We appreciate it. Now I'm going to pass it over to Sergeant Scott Clay, who is from the Rcmp.
Thanks, Jasmine. I'm just on the road today, so I hope my cell connection stays stable enough for this. Operationally, the last month has been busy and taxing on our members in Lytton. We've had a couple significant calls in the area that have been time and labor intensive. With that in mind, we are just working on a bit of a mental health break plan for our Lytton members, just to give them a little bit of R&R to regroup and recover from these calls they've done. So you may see some new temporary faces in the community for the next little bit. Don't be alarmed, they're just here to help us out. On a good note, though, I am happy to report that we have seen some success in some of our major files. A lot of you will be aware or remember the lady that was caught up in the flooding outside of Spence's Bridge there on Nicola Creek. I'm happy to report that we were able to locate her, and we were able to offer some closure to her surviving family from the Lower Mainland by giving them a full picture of what happened and returning her to her family. Sadly, she is deceased, but the family was grateful for the effort. Secondly, and some of our long-term residents may remember this, back in 2016, they were doing some fire smarting work up by the airport, and one of the LFN members and one of the Kanaka members came across some found human remains. Working in conjunction with our missing persons coordinator for the district and partner police agencies and the use of DNA, we were able to identify the remains and bring closure to another family for a non-suspicious death. So those are two, I think, real important things that were good for the members in light of all that's happened in Lytton in the last month and in the last 10 months. From a logistical standpoint, we are closing in on the new temporary detachment on the old hospital site on the corner of Main and 12 there. I hope to be in the community next week with 2 of the finalists on the bid for a site visit and logistical plan. The goal is to have the building on the ground and operational the first week of July. We've changed our plan a little bit and we want to increase the services, like I believe I mentioned last month on this, where we'll have front counter services, fingerprinting, criminal records checks, and full access in that aspect to the office there for our members. And finally, our new addition, Constable Ultra, who I mentioned last month, arrives in the community on Saturday, and his first day of work is Tuesday. So he'll be out getting the lay of the land and looking to meet and greet and hopefully hit the ground running. And that's my update, Jasmine. Thank you.
Thanks, Sergeant Clay. All right, I know this is a bit of a marathon of updates today, so just a few more. I'm now going to pass it over to CAO Gru to provide an update on the 5-year financial plan.
Thank you, Jasmine. I'm calling in tonight from the traditional territory of the Taconic. I'm providing the financial plan update for our CFO, Terry Hawes, who couldn't make it this evening. I just want to comment that it's been a difficult and tough budget to put together for council, obviously with the reduction in the BC assessments for the village. May 4th will be the first 3 readings of the 5-year financial plan for 2022 to 2026 and the tax rate bylaw. We are happy to, well, I guess we're appreciative to be able to offer to the commercial businesses a drop of 1 point in the mill rate, recognizing the struggles. Also on May 15th, or sorry, May the 11th will be the adoption of the bylaw because we have a requirement to have it legislatively submitted to the provincial government by May 15th. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm actually going to stick with you for the next few minutes here, I think, for the local government updates as well.
So the establishment of the municipal hall, we are looking at 3 options, working through a funding model and potentially leasing at either the Aspen Planer site or establishing on a Village of Lytton property that's closer to the village itself. By election, we saw over 50 show up for the advanced polls, plus mail-in ballots of 13 at that point. This Saturday is a general voting day, so make sure if you haven't been out to vote that you get out and vote. We hope to have the results online by 10 o'clock at the latest on Saturday night. The next one, we have 165 electorates, so we've saw about 30% turnout at the general voting, so that's good. The update on the economic development portfolio. We are, as I've mentioned before, looking at completing a regional economic development strategy in conversation with our recovery director. It's felt that we probably should be waiting till late summer to post the position now. We'd like to see the debris removal happen first because it's a bit difficult to be recruiting business and developing an economic development portfolio at this point. We do see some good strides coming ahead of us though. On the village itself, the recovery part of the village, it might sound boring to people, but we've actually adopted 8 bylaws since February. 8 policies have been adopted and put in place since February. We've now put our agendas and minutes on a platform called iCompass, so it's accessible. And that'll also hold the bylaws, policies, and any reports that are done by council. So it's accessible by anybody. And further to that is, that's it. That's good. Thanks.
Thanks so much. I believe I'm passing it right over to Ron Matuzzi again for an update on the Unmet Needs Committee.
Well, thankfully, there are no dates in this report, so I think it should be fine. Just want to talk about the fact that we have been looking for some time to establish an Unmet Needs Committee. We have the CAC, but the CAC's role is really a municipal role, reviewing some of the plans and bylaws and those types of things. What we'd like to do is really take a page of the NBC handbook, create an Unmet Needs Committee. That committee would be made up of a lot of people that are here tonight with us, various NGOs who provide services to our citizens, as well as representatives of the community. So we have that community input and part of the recovery team so that we could make sure that all aspects of a person's needs are covered, regardless of which agency provides it, to be able to deal with things like donations from a community point of view. So we'd like to have representatives from the community. and really create a working group that could work together with that community input to move it forward. So stay tuned. And thanks to the number of people who volunteered. What was the number, Leslie?
4.
4 people who volunteered, so that's great. We have 4 members of the community that stepped forward, and that'll be a great start. So thank you.
Thanks, Ren. Our last update of the evening will be coming from Kevin from the TNRD, and he's going to provide a bit of an update on emergency management.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So my name is Kevin Skrepnik. I'm the Emergency Program Coordinator for the Thompson-Nicola Regional District, and I'm speaking to you this evening from the beautiful and very much unceded territory of the Tecumseh. So I'm acutely aware that I'm the last speaker here, so I'll be fairly brief. I just wanted to give a quick update in terms of emergency management and emergency preparedness for the region. So the TNRD emergency program, we support our 10 electoral areas as well as 7 of our member municipalities, including Lytton. So our main role is mainly around public safety, getting people out of harm's way if there is an emergency, supporting those evacuees, and kind of coordinating the overall situation. We're not making the on-the-ground decisions, in terms of firefighting and things like that. Our EOC is based out of Kamloops, and the municipalities that we support, such as Lytton, do run their own response, but we provide whatever support we can from where we're at. So we are still actually our emergency operations center is still active due to the atmospheric river response. We still have a number of homes that are at risk of ongoing impacts now that we're into the spring freshet season. So still very much active here. We do also still have Dale Kronbush, who is our resiliency and recovery manager. I would imagine a lot of folks on the call tonight have probably spoken to Dale or know of him. He has been going since early July and is still very much engaged, both for the atmospheric river, but of course for folks who are impacted by wildfires as well. In terms of this coming fire season, we're not seeing a lot of strong indicators right now in terms of which way it's going to be looking. Once we get into June and we see the amount of rain, how long that rain kind of lingers for, that's always a big driver of fire activity in the province. Having said that, though, as folks in Lytton are well aware, if there's going to be fire activity anywhere in BC, it's going to be in Lytton. This area is very fire prone. This is in many ways a nature-made wind tunnel, and obviously we saw the results of that not just last year but in years previous as well. So regardless of kind of what the overall fire season picture is looking like, obviously folks in this area are going to be very vigilant, and we're going to be keeping an eye on how that situation comes together. One other note, just kind of on more of the provincial efforts. A new kind of tool that's going to be in the toolkit this year is what's called broadcast intrusive alerting. So folks have probably had the alerts come onto your phone if there's an Amber Alert or things like that. That is being expanded in BC for use during wildfire and flood events. So up until now, we haven't had access to that as a local government. That is changing. So now, whether it's the TNRD, the village, Lytton First Nation, will have access through the province, through Emergency Management BC, to send those alerts. So those aren't the subscription-based ones that you might hear about sometimes. These are the ones that come to your phone, whether you want it or not. Up until now, they had only been used for earthquakes and tsunamis. So that is a new thing this year. It will go to phones, but it'll also go across radio and television stations as it's part of an overall federal initiative. So just be aware of that. There is a test of that system planned, I believe, for the first week of May, which is Emergency Preparedness Week. So there's going to be some testing involved with that. Locally, obviously, we're going to be concerned primarily with fire season in this area. We are going to be meeting with staff from the Lytton Fire Base next week. And we also had a meeting with folks, TNRD rural residents out in the Botany Valley as well a few weeks ago, just to kind of, get ahead of where we're going here. And obviously an ongoing concern, and Brad from MOTI touched on a little bit, obviously with the uncertainty around some of the highways, particularly Highway 1 between Lytton and Spence's Bridge, as well as the ongoing flag activity on Highway 12. Not only in terms of obviously public safety in terms of using the highway, but if we are in a situation where we need to be evacuating people and those routes are compromised, that's obviously something that we need to get ahead of at all possible. I believe that is it for me, and thank you.
Thanks so much, Kevin. All right, I know that was a lot of information to take in, but we're now going to open it up for questions. So if you do have a question, please use the chat box and we'll go through them until we run out of time today. You can also use the raise hand function on Zoom if you'd like to ask your question out loud. I do believe we'll probably have enough time, but if we don't have enough time to get to everybody's questions, we'll include those in a written Q&A and we'll post that to the website following the meeting. So I do see Trisha's hand up. So Trisha, I'm going to ask you to unmute now so you can ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Trisha Thorpe and I live at the mouth of the Botany. I'm the Lyttonite who attended the TNRD meeting last week. I attended the meeting as a follow-up to a letter that I had written advocating for a stronger voice for those of us on the Village of Lytton boundaries who feel we are not being seen or heard, particularly the 18 or 20 of us who lost our homes to the Lytton wildfire. Ironically, I asked the TNRD to add their voice to the Village of Lytton and Lytton First Nations in advocating for essential services. What's ironic about this is the next day, Friday, my husband had a heart attack. Knowing that an ambulance that had come into Lytton prior took an hour and a half to get here, I started driving to Lillooet, telling the ambulance I would meet them en route. My husband had a heart attack. Driving to Lillooet, having a loved one tell you that the blackness was encroaching and they weren't afraid to die, but they didn't want to leave you alone, is a terrifying experience that I hope no one in this area ever has to go through again. I understand that we are now getting a doctor's office. That doctor's office has no drugs, no lab, no equipment. There is an urgent need that is not being met in our community 10 months after the fire. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to get this essential service here in Lytton before this happens to someone else?
I'm sorry to hear that, Trisha, but thank you so much for sharing that information with us. I don't believe we have anybody here from Interior Health or First Nations Health Authority today, but I do know they're available after, so I will definitely pass along your comments and your questions over to them, and I'll make sure that we get a response for you. I also see Denise O'Connor's hand up. So Denise, I'm going to ask you to unmute now.
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate these community meetings. I find it interesting. I just did a count and there's 62 participants. And I think I counted about 17 that are actually from the Lytton area. So I just found that an interesting piece of information. I do have a question. Raleigh Russell mentioned when he did his introduction that one of the things they're waiting for cleanup is to get the right of entry forms filled and handed in. But there's something else that hasn't been talked about, and that's the meetings that happen between insurance and, I don't know if it's village or province or who it is. Those meetings have been happening, over and over. My understanding is that the meetings are being walked away from, that there's, they're not coming at any kind of agreement. But I guess basically what I want to know is what is it exactly they're negotiating and what is each side's position? When is the next meeting? And has there been any discussion about bringing a mediator in? Because as an insured owner of property where I lost my home, no cleanup's going to start as far as I understand until that piece is done as well. So I don't know who would answer that, but I would appreciate an answer.
Sure, thanks for that question. I'm not sure, James or Ron Matuzzi, maybe, if there's anything
I
you
can take
can.
a crack at it, Jasmine. Yeah. Thank you. First off, I'm not sure what you heard, Denise, but nobody walked away from anything. We've had a number of meetings with the insurance companies. And, you know, essentially the issue is, and people are insured for a set amount of money. If people have insurance, that's the payout. That's what happens. We recognize in this particular case that the ability to clean up, whether it's the uninsured or the insured, the costs are high, and we acknowledge that. And so what we've asked people to do is, could you at least provide us with the information? It's on the website, the same with the TNRD, as to what is that shortfall? What is the difference between, so if you had a policy and there was, you know, $10,000 for cleanup, but it was going to cost $50,000 to clean up, we need to know what that number is. So at this point in time, and so a request could be made for consideration. Provinces, federal government, no one normally, you know, deals with insured loss, but people are trying to work together to see if there's a way to help out. So the cooperation we need is the information, and we've asked a number of insurance companies to provide it. I believe some may have, but until we know what the gap is, what is the shortfall between what people with their insurance policies will pay for and the costs, it's really hard to make requests. So that's where it sits. There's no negotiation per se. We just need to know those numbers, and we're asking the insurance companies to provide it.
Thanks, Ron. I do believe Parliamentary Secretary Russell is available for some information as well.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Denise. And I think, to be honest, Ron touched on pretty much what I was going to say, but just to clarify, you know, from my perspective, it's not a negotiation that's taking place. It's us trying to make sure that there are not gaps that we're unaware of. And that's my comments early on, especially were to the fact that what we're hearing is that there are people that are not covered in insurance is not covering certain things that they would have expected they were going to be covered for. And we need to know where those gaps are from you all as homeowners. So from my perspective, it's more making sure that you can share when you are running into challenges with insurance not covering things that you thought, so that we have a good sense of what those are. And then we can take that back into our conversations provincially, working with the village and working with the insurers, to be honest, to try to make sure that we can cover those where possible, and make sure that the insurers are stepping up to support people that are covered.
Great, thank you so much for that. I'm just going to jump over to one of the questions that was posted in the chat earlier. So this one, I believe, is for James, and it says, any possibility to install water meters in a well system with the curb stops?
Yeah, it's a great question, great suggestion. Right now, that's not a plan. It could be done while we're changing out the curb stops that are broken, or while we're capping off some of the water services. At this point, there hasn't been direction to provide that. I'm not 100% sure that it would be funded through the DFA, because it's not a like-for-like replacement of what was lost. So we could investigate it, get some pricing for it, and see if it's a viable option to move forward with. But it is a good suggestion, and yeah, it could be done at this time.
Great, thanks, James. I'm gonna jump over to another question that we received in the chat, and that was just asking for clarification on interim housing. So Jack, I believe this is a question for you, if you're still with us. The question is, interim housing, 3-story units, what about fire protection? Her belief is that the fire department is only able to respond to 2 stories. Would you be able to provide some insight on that, Jack?
Yeah, I actually responded in written form to the caption already, but what I thought I explained this, what I submitted to BC Housing was just to give them, open up the door to get some conversation going. I wasn't sure of the fire capacity, but obviously 2 stories is going to be the limit. So that'll change somewhat the structure and the design as we go forward.
Thanks, Jack. I'm gonna jump over to one of the raised hands now. Charles, I see your hand up. I'll ask you to unmute now.
Yes, my question is regarding whether there is any funding available for people who lost businesses but not homes, that were uninsured.
That's a great question. Do we have anybody from the recovery team that might know the answer to that offhand? If not, we can take it
Good
back.
for Daphne Nelson to answer that from Community Futures, if she hasn't got an answer for that.
Daphne, if you're still with us, any chance you know?
I am unaware of any funding being provided for businesses for recovery purposes at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take that one back as well.
Can we just clarify, or is the question about debris cleanup for uninsured businesses, or is it business supports?
No, it was just replacement. Just loss of equipment, loss of contents, basically loss of contents. Yeah.
Right. We'll make sure we write that one down as well, just in case we have more information, Charles. Thanks so much for your question.
Thank you.
Now gonna hop on over to Edith. Edith, I see your hand up, so I'll ask you to unmute.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak. So my name is Edith Lauren Kuhunga, and I'm the school administrator for Stein Valley School in Lytton. And I've held one meeting in regards to 1 year later, June 30th. For some of you who don't know, our school is working on a time capsule, and we will be burying it on June 30th. Up at our school, and we're working with the University of Victoria, plus a few other institutions on documenting our process of the time capsule and everything. And so I started holding meetings of trying to invite everybody to come together so that we could all look at what June 30th is going to look like 1 year later. And so our next meeting is on May the 9th, and it's from 1:30 to 3:30. And I would hope that we've got a lot of levels of government that are on the call tonight. I would hope that some of the levels of government would come forward with some funding as to how we're going to process that or to hold that 1 day. I'm hoping that we will be able to get wellness practitioners that will be working or available for people because we know it's going to be lots of mixed emotion on June 30th. And so I would hope that the village and all of the levels of government that are on here today, that you would consider how you could help support June 30th and making it a day for our residents to be able to do some healing and move forward. So if anybody is interested in attending that meeting, I will put my name and my email address on the chat, and we'll send you the Zoom invite. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Edith, and thanks for sharing that information with everyone. All right, I'm gonna jump on over to another question that was put in the chat earlier. I believe this question is for Sergeant Clay, if he's still on the line with us. And the question is, are there any mental health supports from the RCMP provided?
I guess I just need a little bit of clarification. Are we looking at mental health supports for the community, or are we talking specifically for our first responders that we have?
I believe it's for the community itself, but if the person who sent this in wants to clarify, that would be great. But the question specifically is, what about mental health supports from RCMP?
So there's nothing direct from as far as mental health goes that the RCMP do as part of our mandate. that is a topic of conversation that's come up a fair amount, because we do see our officers responding to more and more mental health related occurrences, not just in our area, but pretty much provincially and nationally here. So as part of our service delivery review and program enhancement, we are looking at ways that we can partner up with FNHA, Interior Health, and other service providers to do more of a mental health type response or crisis response type component to calls for service.
Great. Thanks, Sergeant Clay. That's great to hear. All right. I see Megan's hand up. Megan, I'm going to ask you to unmute now.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I had a question for Kelsey regarding FireSmart, but first I have just a comment for Ron Matuzzi and for Parliamentary Secretary Russell. I haven't actually, as an underinsured property owner, I haven't actually heard that you need to know the value that I'm underinsured. I know that's a question in the right of entry permit, but my adjuster has told me not to sign the right of entry permit as they're in discussion or negotiation. Anyway, so I'm been instructed by my adjuster not to sign the right of entry permit, but I understand that you'd like to know how far underinsured I am. So maybe that could go in a village update, just that you need that information and we can email it in, because really I didn't know that you need that information. And obviously I won't sign the right of entry permit if my adjuster tells me not to, because I don't want to jeopardize my claim. So that's just a comment. I don't know if you want to.
I could just respond. Yeah, that's great. I think there was some confusion. I don't believe for the insured people that the village actually needs a right of entry. Your insurers will have that. That was where everything was placed in the paragraph. It was confusing. I'll take responsibility for that confusion. What's more important is we have information on the policy. It's really about the gap. Okay, and I think it's unfortunate. The right of entry was for the uninsured. We absolutely need the right of entry for the uninsured before we can enter the property. But for the insured, your insurance company and their contractor will have that. They'll need to have that, and so that part's fine. What we really need is the gap, and we need it desperately. So
okay, yeah. So if that can go out on behalf of all of the underinsured people that aren't on the meeting tonight, if that could go out in a village update, I think it'd be really appreciated, and I think you will get that information. I don't think anyone's trying to withhold information. We just don't know what information you need, and obviously don't want to sign anything. So yeah, thanks for your answer, Ron.
Thanks for bringing it up, Megan. It's a great point, and I think that'll be helpful.
And then my question for Kelsey, I don't know if she's still on the call, but you mentioned that that you're trying to secure funding for fire smarting the homes in the rebuild. But I'm also wondering if there is going to be any, or if you can also consider finding funding for fire smarting the properties that are still in the village that haven't been burned out. So those of us on the edges of town. Yeah, just wondering if there's going to be, or hoping you can keep that in mind. Those are my questions.
Thanks, Megan. Kelsey, if you're still on the line and maybe have a response, please let me know. If not, we can take that one back. Okay.
I'm here, Jasmine.
Great.
Thanks, Megan, for the question. And actually, the way that the FireSmart funding is set up right now is for existing properties. So right now we're working on molding it a little bit so that it can be applied to new properties as well. So yeah, the funding will exist for structures that were undamaged or partially damaged or that will need to be rebuilt from scratch. So great question.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kelsey. I'm going to jump over to a couple questions that have come through the chat here. So the first is just about communication. So sometimes residents are emailing staff or calling and not receiving a response. And I believe that's a note to what Mayor Polderman was speaking to earlier. Staff are quite overwhelmed by folks contacting them. So folks are just wondering, is there another avenue to be able to communicate with the Village of Lytton team? And I do believe the update today was please email communication@lytton.ca. And Yvonne and the rest of the staff will make sure that your email is directed to the right person in a timely way. Leslie, anything to add to that?
Oh, you're right about that. That's great.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, I see a question here in the chat. So as there is a focus on getting residents back to Lytton, are there any plans going forward to support businesses in returning to Lytton?
I can comment on that. So the provincial government had provided 500,000 through the Rural Development Fund in January. And so once we do the Rural Economic Development Strategy, which businesses and stakeholders, so sector businesses such as, whether it's commercial, agriculture, whatever, will all be contacted and spoken to. And then the economic development person will be hired and they will implement the recommendations that come through, which means that they will be working with the businesses that are on hand and helping develop new.
Great, thanks so much, Leslie. See someone on a landline here that has their hand raised. So I'm going to ask you to unmute. I believe *6 on your end will unmute you. There you go.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Hi, my name's Ron Nichols, and I just have a quick question, almost a follow-up to Denise O'Connor's question. In my particular circumstance, and also I think probably on behalf of the other 11 homes that were insured with my insurance company, about a week and a half ago, we all got a call that there would be no cleanup on our properties until fall. And I have signed the right of entry permit. I did actually quite promptly when I was told that my property was in one of the critical areas for access to the Fraser River Bridge. So I signed it to make sure that nothing got held up there. And I haven't heard anything back from my adjuster since then. And I was just wondering if there's any new news. It sounded from the news earlier that it was quite promising that the province was, or that somebody was going to help, basically because of the rising costs of the cleanup in relation to a normal cleanup. I think pretty much we're all underinsured at this point with the rising costs. And I'm not sure if that's why they told us that we're not going to get any cleanup until at least the fall. But I was wondering if there's any news about that, or if there's been any breakthroughs on that.
I could respond, Jasmine. Yeah, no, I think we continue. We're going to be trying to work, with the insurers and their contractors to, as we talked about earlier today. We really need to know the scope of the problem. Once again, there is no program for this. I mean, generally speaking, if my house burned down in Kelowna and I was underinsured today, I'd be in big trouble. But one of the things that's so important here is you have the whole village. And you have the nature of the way the village burnt, the contaminated soils. It's a pretty complex area, and at some point, leaving the debris is not an option. It's not that we can fence off the area. So I think everybody realizes it's a very unique situation, and everybody's looking to try to find a solution where a program doesn't exist. And if you know anything about, I worked in local government, if you know anything about government, it's really hard to create solutions on the fly. So I think you have to bear with everyone, but before you can solve a problem, you have to know how big it is. And you have to know what the problem is. And that's why we're really asking. And I appreciate, that you did sign, and I appreciate that you did, put your name forward to be able to help out your neighbors in this case by that corridor. So I appreciate that. So I think that the sooner we get that information, we'll sit down with the contractors for the insurance companies, and we'll try to hammer out what is the scope of this problem, so we can see is there a solution? Is there something we could do to move forward? Nobody wants the debris on the ground, and we were hopeful that the insurers were ready to move in March, and we were hopeful that they were. First, I heard that that people couldn't move till September. Hopefully, that's not true, but it could be the individual contractor. So, fingers crossed. We may be able to get something done, and hopefully before September. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, there were, Leslie, these are for you. These are just follow-ups to the business supports and the business plan that you were speaking to just earlier. So 2 questions. Will that funding be helping Village of Lytton or all affected businesses? And does that include businesses under TNRD jurisdiction?
Well, we would work with the regional district as part of the regional strategy development. And at this time, I couldn't answer that question wholeheartedly, but certainly it would be looked into and considered. And what we are hoping to do is be looking at the Village of Lytton as the hub of the service area, and then the businesses that need support outside within the area that use the Village of Lytton as their service center.
Great, thank you so much. I saw a question in the chat about FireSmart contact information. So Kelsey has put that in the chat there, and Yvonne has put in a link as well. I see Edith has her hand raised here. So Edith, I'll ask you to unmute.
Thank you. So just following up with my question in the chat in regards to the RCMP, I'm just asking the question in regards to the complexities of some of the calls that have come in, and that in the recent months, if the RCMP are handling some of those calls as wellness checks.
Right, okay. Sergeant Claire, are you still on the line?
Yeah, no, I'm still here, Jasmine. So yeah, we are doing and we are handling some of these calls as wellness checks. Over the course of the last, I'd say, year or so, the policy as it relates to wellness checks has changed, just from the complexity of calls. And again, this is not exclusive to Lytton. This is straight across the country here. I guess one of the things that I should say in this is, as we look at our wellness checks and the complexities of the calls, the individual members responding have to make that critical risk assessment at the time as to whether there's something they can handle on their own, or they need to go with a 2-member response. And if we can reasonably and safely bring in a third party, whether it be a healthcare practitioner or family or something else. One of the things that we are exploring, and this has been working with LFN, is increasing our actual victim assistance program capacity within the community. Traditionally, pre-fire, Lytton, we used community-based victim services out of either Ashcroft or Lillooet. In the months leading up to June 30th, we were working with Lytton First Nations and with some interested community members to bring local victim services, community-based, into the area. So in the case of wellness checks, if we don't have something formal in place with health practitioners, as the police, we would assess and triage the call the best we could, deal with that critical incident, and then connect the family or the individual who was the subject of the wellness check in with our victim assistance program to make sure that those referrals and resources were being accessed or put in place.
Great, thanks, Sergeant Clay. Just gonna scan through the chat one last time to make sure we answered everything. I do see one other question that's come in, and I believe this will be our last question of the day. I understand that something was found near the fire hall during digging in the ground. I did notice archaeologists sifting yesterday. Can you share what was found or if it was anything of significance? Not sure, James, do you maybe have any information on that?
I do. I can't share much because we haven't received the report from the archaeologist, but there was a chance find in the road out in front of the fire hall that the archaeologists are looking at. I'm not sure if it is significant or if it's heritage at this point in time. And so that's all I can release, but I'd be happy to share more information once we receive the report from AEW about it.
Thank you so much, James. So I believe that's all the time we have, but I do believe we covered all of the questions, which is great. There's a few I know we're taking back here. Just before we move on to closing remarks, I do just want to take a second to acknowledge Tricia and Don's journey and our gratitude for his health. I know that many residents have been experiencing many stressful situations, including this one. And I just want to take a moment to recognize everything that all of our residents have been through and continue to experience. I know this has not been an easy journey by any means. So appreciation for all that you're experiencing. And I do want to encourage anyone that is open to it or that needs it to take advantage of the mental health supports that the Red Cross are offering and a few others that are on our website. But I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge that and say thank you so much for coming along this journey with us. I do believe Amanda Adams has her hand up, so maybe I'll just provide you the opportunity to say some remarks here. Oh. There we go. Amanda, do you still want to say something?
Thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate being unmuted. And Tricia, and to your family, my hopes and prayers are with you and your husband. On that note, I just wanted to share that at Tilcomsheen Health Center, located at 1535 St. George's Road, it is now open, and there's going to be 3 doctors on rotation, and this health services is for all community members. I will leave the phone number in the chat, 250-455-2221. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that information. That's great. Thanks for saying that. All right, so just in the last minute here, I just want to let you know that we do have a date set for the next community meeting. So that is going to be Wednesday, June 1st, again at about 5:30. So please mark your calendars and save the date. We'll be doing something similar here. If you do have any other questions that maybe you're thinking of now or that we missed, please send those to communication@lytton.ca and we'll make sure they get responded to. So on that note, it is 7:31. Apologies for running a little bit late here, but thank you all so much for attending today's community meeting. I really appreciate it, and everyone here, all staff and everybody involved, I really appreciate your questions and your feedback, and all the resource folks on the line today providing updates. Appreciate your time, appreciate your energy, and all of your understanding. So if you would rather ask your questions via phone, we do have a phone line. It is 778-254-5004. And I'll make sure both the email address and the phone number are in the chat here in just 1 second. But that does conclude today's meeting. So thank you so much and have a great night.